The envelope in my wife's lawyer's hand wasn't the only surprise that Tuesday morning. The real shock was the one I handed him right back. My name is Maxwell Stone, I'm 52 years old, and this is how I discovered my wife didn't just want a divorce. She wanted to erase me completely. You know how some mornings start normal and then turn your whole world upside down? That's exactly what happened when Charles Walsh walked into my office at Stone Insurance Group. Sharp suit, expensive briefcase, that smug look lawyers get when they think they're holding all the cards. "Mr. Stone, I'm serving you with divorce papers on behalf of my client, Patricia Stone," he said, sliding the thick envelope across my mahogany desk like he was doing me a favor. I'd been expecting this for months. Hell, maybe a full year. When your wife of 18 years starts working late every night and suddenly needs a whole new wardrobe, you don't need a private investigator to connect the dots. But I'd been building my own case for 12 months, spending the last 6 months in intensive investigation mode. "There's also a restraining order," Walsh continued. "You're not to contact Mrs. Stone directly or come within 500 feet of her residence." Her residence. Not our home. That was the first hint this wasn't going to be a typical divorce. I opened the papers right there while he watched. Most guys would have gotten angry, started yelling, maybe thrown him out. But I spent 18 years building this company from nothing. You don't do that by losing your cool every time someone tries to screw you over. The numbers made me laugh out loud. Patricia was asking for $2.8 million in immediate support, plus 60% of the company, plus full custody of our boys Nathan and Lucas. According to these papers, I was an unfit father who'd neglected his family for years. "Something amusing, Mr. Stone?" Walsh asked. "Oh, absolutely," I said, reaching into my desk drawer. "You see, your client made one big mistake. She assumed I didn't know about Charles Brennan." The color drained from Walsh's face when I said that name. I pulled out my own envelope, thicker than his, bound with a rubber band. "This contains about 300 pages of documentation proving your client has been embezzling from the joint investment accounts she manages. Photos of her with Mr. Brennan at the Ritz-Carlton. Bank records showing mysterious transfers to shell companies. Oh, and my personal favorite, the $2 million life insurance policy she took out on me 8 months ago. Quite a coincidence, don't you think?" Walsh's hand actually shook as he reached for the envelope. I watched him flip through the first few pages. Security camera footage from the hotel. Patricia's signature on documents transferring money to companies that existed only on paper. Text messages between her and Charles discussing my accident-prone work schedule. "Where did you get this?" he whispered. "I'm in the insurance business, Mr. Walsh. I investigate fraud for a living. Did you really think I wouldn't notice when someone was running a scam on me?" The truth is, I'd been suspicious for over a year, not because I wanted to catch Patricia cheating, I already suspected that, but because something felt wrong about the whole situation. The late-night phone calls, the sudden interest in our financial details, the way she kept asking about my business trips and whether I always drove the same route to work. It started with small things. Patricia asking about my schedule more than usual, wanting to know if I had any dangerous clients, if I ever felt unsafe driving alone at night. At first, I thought she was just being a concerned wife. Then I found the life insurance application in her car. Most guys find out their wife is having an affair and they hire a divorce lawyer. Me? I hired 3 different private investigators and spent $75,000 over 12 months digging into every aspect of Patricia's life for the past 2 years. What I found was worse than an affair. Patricia and Charles Brennan had been planning this for over 2 years. Not just the divorce. They wanted me gone completely. Dead, if possible. Financially ruined, at minimum. The insurance policy was step 1. Get me classified as high risk, then wait for an accident. Step 2 was the embezzlement. Drain our accounts while making it look like I was the one stealing from the company. Step 3 was the divorce, where Patricia would play the innocent victim of an abusive, unstable husband. Charles Brennan wasn't just her boyfriend. He was her business partner. His mother, Judge Margaret Brennan, was originally set to preside over our divorce case. The same judge who'd been taking consulting fees from the Brennan family law firm for years. Lucky for me, I'd documented that too. "Mr. Walsh," I said, standing up, "I suggest you advise your client to reconsider her demands, because what you're holding is just the preview. I have enough evidence to put her away for fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder." I walked around the desk and opened my office door. "Tell Patricia she has 48 hours to sign a fair settlement agreement. 50-50 split, joint custody, no alimony. If she refuses, I go to the FBI with everything I have. Walsh stumbled out of my office like he'd seen a ghost. Maybe he had. The ghost of the naive husband Patricia thought she was married to. The guy who'd supposedly never suspect his loving wife was plotting his murder. That guy died the moment I found the insurance policy hidden in her glove compartment. Now she was about to meet the real Maxwell Stone. The man who'd built a $15 million company by never backing down from a fight. And this was going to be the fight of my life. The 48 hours I gave Patricia turned into the longest 2 days of my life. Not because I was nervous, I knew exactly what cards I was holding, but because I had to pretend everything was normal while she was probably planning her next move. See, the restraining order meant I couldn't go home. Was staying at the downtown Chicago Marriott, eating room service and watching my wife try to figure out how I'd turned the tables on her. My private investigator, Danny Torres, had the house under surveillance. Every phone call, every visitor, every time she left the driveway, I knew about it within 5 minutes. She's panicking, Danny told me over the phone that first night. Made 14 calls to Charles Brennan. He's not answering. Smart man. Charles probably figured out that getting involved with Patricia was the worst decision of his 49-year life. When you're facing federal conspiracy charges, you don't stick around to comfort your accomplice. The investigation had been exhausting. For 6 months, I'd been living a double life. During the day, I ran Stone Insurance Group like nothing was wrong. Evenings and weekends, I was tracking my wife's every move. I'd followed her to hotels, restaurants, even to Charles's lakefront condo in Lincoln Park. The hardest part wasn't catching them together. It was pretending I didn't know. The breakthrough came when Nathan, my 16-year-old, started helping me organize files in my home office. He was looking for his old report cards when he found some bank statements Patricia had hidden behind a filing cabinet. "Dad, why is Mom's name on an account for something called Midwest Capital Holdings?" he asked, holding up the paper. That's when I knew she'd gotten sloppy. Midwest Capital Holdings didn't exist. It was one of the shell companies Charles had set up to hide the money they were stealing from our joint accounts. Over 8 months, they'd moved $340,000 into accounts I'd never seen before. The next morning, I got the call I'd been waiting for. Walsh wanted to meet. Not at his office. He suggested a coffee shop downtown. Neutral territory. When someone requests neutral territory, you know they're scared. I found him at a corner table, looking like he hadn't slept. The cocky lawyer from 2 days ago was gone. This guy looked ready to recommend his client take whatever deal I offered. "Your wife wants to discuss terms," he said before I even sat down. "No discussion needed," I replied. "She signs the agreement I drafted, or I make my call to Agent Morrison at the FBI." Walsh pulled out a legal pad covered in notes. "She's claiming the evidence was obtained illegally, that you hired people to hack her accounts." I laughed. "Everything I have is completely legal. Bank records from accounts with my name on them, security footage from public areas. Hell, half the evidence came from her own laptop, the one she left open in our kitchen every morning while she showered. That was true. Patricia's biggest mistake wasn't the affair or even the murder plot. It was getting careless about operational security. She'd been so confident I was clueless that she stopped covering her tracks. "Mr. Stone," Walsh said, "she's prepared to accept a 60-40 split in your favor. 50-50 or nothing, and she wants joint custody maintained. That's fine. The boys should have access to both parents." I leaned forward. "What I won't negotiate on is the alimony. She gets nothing, not 1 penny. Walsh scribbled notes frantically. "She'll need some time to consider. She's had 2 years to consider her choices. Time's up." I stood to leave, then turned back. "Oh, and Mr. Walsh, you might want to distance yourself from this case. When the FBI starts investigating the Brennan family, they're going to look at every lawyer who's taken money from them. Just friendly advice." The look on his face told me he was already planning his exit strategy. That afternoon, Danny called with an update that made everything clear. Charles Brennan just liquidated 3 investment accounts and bought a one-way ticket to Costa Rica under the name Michael Harrison. Leaves tonight. So that was their backup plan. When the frame job failed, Charles would disappear with whatever money he could grab, using fake identification. Leave Patricia to face the music alone. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The call came at 6 p.m. Patricia herself, not her lawyer. "Maxwell, we need to talk. Through lawyers only. You know the rules. Please. Just please. I know you're angry, but we can work this out." Her voice was different, smaller. The confident woman who'd been running scams for 2 years was gone. What was left sounded scared and very alone. "Patricia, you tried to have me killed." Long silence. Then quietly, "It wasn't supposed to go that far, but it did. You took out a $2 million life insurance policy and started asking about my driving routes. What exactly was the plan? Brake failure? Heart attack? Or were you just going to wait for Charles to arrange an accident?" He said it would look natural, that no one would suspect anything. There it was, the admission I'd been waiting for. I was recording the call, naturally. One more piece of evidence for the federal prosecutors. "Here's what's going to happen," I told her. "You're going to sign the settlement agreement tonight, then you're going to disappear from Chicago for a while. Maybe go visit your sister in Denver. Because if you're still here when the FBI comes asking questions about Charles, I can't guarantee you won't get caught up in their investigation. Maxwell, please. I made mistakes, but I never wanted to hurt you. I wanted something different. You wanted something different, so you decided to commit fraud and conspiracy to commit murder? Patricia, you're 48 years old. You're a lawyer. You knew exactly what you were doing." Another long silence. "The boys," she said finally. "What will you tell them?" That was the question I'd been dreading. Nathan was 16, Lucas was 14. Old enough to understand that their parents were getting divorced, but hopefully not old enough to understand why their mother might be going to prison. "I'll tell them their mother made some bad choices and needs to go away for a while. They'll stay with me. Will you let them visit? If you're not in federal custody, yes. But Patricia, if you ever try to manipulate them the way you manipulated me, that ends immediately." She was crying now. Real tears, not the fake ones she'd used to get out of speeding tickets or convince me to buy her expensive jewelry. "I'll sign the papers," she whispered. "Smart choice. Walsh will bring them by your hotel in an hour." I hung up and called Danny. "It's over. She's signing tonight." Patricia kept her word. She signed the divorce papers that night, took a settlement that left her with enough money to start over somewhere else, and moved to Denver the next week. But the real work was just beginning. The boys were hurt, confused, angry, all the things kids feel when their world gets turned upside down. Nathan handled it better than Lucas, probably because he'd figured out some of what was happening. But Lucas kept asking when Mom was coming home, whether we could visit her in Denver. I sat them down the day after Patricia left and tried to explain without destroying their image of their mother completely. "Your mom and I had some serious problems," I told them. "She made choices that hurt our family, and now she needs to go figure out her life somewhere else." "What kind of choices?" Lucas asked. Nathan shot him a look. My older son had always been protective of his little brother. "Adult choices that you don't need to worry about," I said. "What you need to know is that none of this is your fault, and both your parents love you very much." It wasn't entirely true about Patricia. I wasn't sure she was capable of love anymore, but it's what they needed to hear. The first few months were rough. Lucas had trouble sleeping, started having problems at school. Nathan threw himself into his studies and baseball, probably trying to stay busy so he wouldn't have to think about everything that had happened. I made changes too. No more 60-hour work weeks. No more business dinners that kept me away from home until 9 p.m. I hired Sarah Mitchell as my new operations manager, a sharp woman in her early 40s who could handle the day-to-day stuff while I focused on being a dad. We started having dinner together every night. Not fancy stuff, usually pizza or burgers, but we'd sit around the kitchen table and actually talk. Nathan told me about the girl he liked at school, Emma Rodriguez. Lucas shared his plans to try out for the freshman baseball team. Normal father-son conversations I'd missed for years while I was building the business. About 4 months after Patricia left, the FBI finally made their move. Agent Morrison called me on a Thursday morning. "Mr. Stone, we've arrested Charles Brennan in Costa Rica. He's being extradited to face charges here in Chicago." "What about Judge Brennan?" "She resigned from the bench 2 weeks ago. We're investigating the family's finances going back 5 years." I felt a satisfaction I hadn't expected. Not because I wanted to destroy people, but because justice was finally happening. The business side of things worked out better than I'd hoped. Word got around Chicago's business community about what Patricia had tried to do. Not the details, I kept those private, but enough people figured out she'd attempted some kind of fraud against me. In the insurance world, reputation is everything. Having it known that Maxwell Stone had outsmarted someone trying to scam him actually brought in new clients. Stone Insurance Group grew by 18% in the first 6 months after the divorce. I hired 2 new agents and expanded our corporate coverage division. Success, it turns out, is better than revenge. But the real victory was watching my boys adapt and grow stronger. Nathan made honor roll junior year and started talking about colleges. Lucas made the freshman baseball team and discovered he had a natural talent for pitching. I also started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee with Rebecca Martinez, a guidance counselor I met at Nathan's parent-teacher conference. She was divorced too, understood the challenges of raising kids alone. We'd been on 4 dates, and the boys seemed to like her. Patricia called exactly once after she moved to Denver. It was Nathan's 17th birthday, and she wanted to talk to him. I let her, but I stayed on the line. She sounded different, smaller, tired. Whatever life she'd built in Denver wasn't the glamorous fresh start she'd probably imagined. "How are the boys doing?" she asked me after Nathan handed the phone back. "They're good. Nathan's looking at Northwestern for college. Lucas pitched a no-hitter last week." That's wonderful. I'm glad they're doing well." "Patricia, why did you really do it? The affair I could understand. People fall out of love. But the rest of it?" Long pause. "I don't know, Maxwell. I really don't. I got caught up in something that seemed exciting, and then it just spiraled. Charles made it sound so easy, like we could have everything we wanted without anyone getting hurt." "Except me. Except you," she agreed quietly. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am sorry." I believed her. Doesn't change what she did, but I think she genuinely regretted how things turned out. Take care of yourself, Patricia, and get some help. Talk to someone about why you thought any of this was a good idea. "I will. And Maxwell, thank you for not destroying me completely. You could have. She was right. I could have made sure she went to prison, lost her law license, ended up with nothing. But I'm not interested in destroying people just because I can. I wanted justice, not revenge." 10 months later, I'm sitting in my office looking at a newspaper article about Charles Brennan's trial. The headline reads, "Chicago lawyer sentenced to 8 years for fraud and conspiracy." The article mentions his mother's resignation from the bench and the ongoing investigation into their family's law practice. Turns out running from the FBI is harder than it looks in the movies, especially when you're stupid enough to use a credit card tied to your real identity at a hotel in San Jose. Charles had been living under the name Michael Harrison for 3 months before he slipped up and used his actual Visa card to pay for room service. The trial revealed details I hadn't known. Charles had been running similar scams on 2 other wealthy clients, stealing over $1.2 million total. Patricia wasn't his first victim. She was just the most willing accomplice. Patricia herself avoided prison time by cooperating with federal prosecutors. She testified against Charles, provided evidence about the shell companies, and agreed to pay full restitution. Her law license was suspended for 3 years, and she was sentenced to 2 years probation with community service. She's still in Denver, working as a paralegal at a small firm that handles personal injury cases. Nathan told me she calls him every few weeks, usually late at night when she's been drinking. He's learned to keep the conversations short. "She always asks if I miss her," he told me over dinner last week. I tell her yes, but I don't miss the drama. My 17-year-old son is wiser than I was at his age. Lucas has adjusted better than I expected. He's pitching varsity baseball as a sophomore, and his grades have actually improved since the divorce. Last month, he asked if Rebecca could come to his playoff game. "I like her, Dad," he said. "She doesn't try to replace Mom. She's just nice." Rebecca Martinez has become a steady presence in our lives. We've been dating for 8 months now, taking things slow because of the boys. She understands the complicated dynamics of divorced families. Her ex-husband left when her daughter was 12, so she knows what it's like to rebuild after betrayal. "The thing about trust," she told me one evening as we walked through Lincoln Park, "is that you don't get it back by avoiding risk. You get it back by choosing better people to trust." She's right. For months after the divorce, I was suspicious of everyone. Questioned every client's motives, double-checked every contract, assumed everyone had an agenda. It's no way to live. The business has stabilized at a new level. Stone Insurance Group now employs 12 people and handles coverage for some of the biggest companies in Chicago. The reputation bump from surviving Patricia's scheme actually opened doors I'd been trying to get through for years. People want to work with someone who can't be fooled, my new operations manager Sarah explained. It's like a seal of approval. If Maxwell Stone couldn't be scammed, he must know what he's doing. I've also started speaking at industry conferences about fraud detection and prevention. Turns out my experience with Patricia taught me things about white-collar crime that most insurance executives never learn. The irony isn't lost on me. Her attempt to destroy me has made me more successful than ever. But the real measure of success is simpler than business. Growth or industry recognition. It's Lucas running into the kitchen every morning to grab breakfast before school, chattering about his classes and friends. It's Nathan bringing home his college acceptance letters. He got into Northwestern, just like we'd hoped. It's Rebecca helping Lucas with algebra at the kitchen table while I make dinner. It's family game nights and weekend trips to see Nathan's baseball tournaments. It's the normal, peaceful life I never realized I was missing. The house feels different now, lighter somehow. Patricia always filled rooms with tension, even when things were good between us. There was always some drama, some crisis that needed my immediate attention. Now there's just peace. I learned something important through all of this. You can't control what other people do to you, but you can control how you respond. I could have let anger drive my decisions. Could have focused on making Patricia and Charles suffer as much as possible. Instead, I focused on protecting what mattered most, my boys and my business. Last week, Nathan asked me if I ever regret not having Patricia arrested from the beginning. I had enough evidence to put her away for 5-10 years, I told him. But that wouldn't have been justice, that would have been revenge. What's the difference? Lucas asked. Justice is about making things right. Revenge is about making people pay. Sometimes they look the same, but they're not. Nathan nodded thoughtfully. So you chose to make things right instead of making her pay. Exactly. And look how it turned out. You guys are doing great, the business is thriving, and I'm happier than I've been in years. Rebecca squeezed my hand across the dinner table. Plus, Patricia has to live with what she did. That's punishment enough. She's right. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let someone else's betrayal destroy your life. Patricia wanted to erase me. Instead, she erased herself. I'm still here, stronger than before, surrounded by people who actually care about me instead of what I can do for them. And that's victory enough. These days, when people ask me about the divorce, I tell them it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because I wanted my marriage to fail, but because it forced me to figure out what really mattered. Family, integrity, building something real instead of just something that looks good from the outside. Patricia taught me that lesson, even if she didn't mean to. For that, I'm almost grateful.